All right. Okay. Please go ahead.
Okay. So hello everyone online. I'm Yaqing from Johns Hopkins University same lab. And today I'm introducing our project using a robophysical model to study the head sensing of obstacles during legged locomotion in complex terrain. So there are many applications where the robots are required to traverse complex terrain with many large obstacles, even comparable to their body size. And now even the best terrestrial robots struggle to do this because we don't have good understanding of the neuromechanical interaction for the transitioning. But on the other hand, we can see that the animals are very good at traversing this complex terrain. So you can see this cockroach traversing this grass terrain by transitioning between locomotor modes. To understand the physical mechanism of how such animal did so can be really helpful to solve other engineering problems, like designing a robust mobile robot. So here we study how a cockroach traverses a layer of beam obstacles. So in our previous research, we found that the animals traverse these obstacles using different modes. For example, in this pitch mode, the animal tried to push and rush through the beams. But when the beam stiffness went high, the animal transitioned from the pitch mode to this roll mode. And in this mode, the animal first pitch its body and try to push through like this, but then quickly found another way and then roll its body into the gap to go through. So it is well known that the animals combine both active sensory feedback and the passive mechanical interaction to control locomotion. So in that previous study, using a potential energy landscape approach, we discovered that the animal statistically transitions from pitch to roll mode to traverse these beams because the rolling into the gap is easier than pushing through the stiff beams. Then the study mainly focused on the role of passive mechanical interaction in this transitioning. Using a feed-forward robotic physical model, it was discovered that this kinetic energy fluctuation from body oscillation during the legged propulsion is helpful to inducing this transition. However, the animal can also make transition even when the kinetic energy is insufficient. So this leads us to hypothesize that the animal also used this part of active adjustments, like adjusting its body and appendages using the force sensing feedback to facilitate the transition from pitch to roll mode. So before we go deep into the various adjustments, here we first introduce the different phases associated with the run, pitch, and roll mode during the traversal. So in a cockroach traversing a layer of beams, there are the traversal process can always be divided into three processes. So in this first phase, the animal run into the beam in a tripod running gait and then hit the beams. And in the second phase, the animal explores around the beam and looking for a gap to traverse. And finally, when it's located one gap, it enters this third phase when the animal starts rolling and finally traverse. We can see that the animals are adjusted its legs, head, and abdomen in the pitch and roll phase, like the lateral two phase. And now we are looking deep into each kind of active adjustments. First, for the leg adjustments. So we observed that there were two kinds of leg adjustments. So here we can see that the animal sprawl its leg outward when it's pushing the beam, but it sprawl its leg inward when rolling. So we can also observe that the animal uses its hind leg differentially, like extending one leg while restoring another leg to support its body when it rolls. So we use the angle between the two legs to quantify this leg sprawl motion. We see that the animal sprawl its leg inward significantly in this roll phase. So we speculate that the animal did so to reduce roll stability, because when the animal sprawl its legs inward, the supporting polygon was shrinking, so the roll stability was reduced. We define this leg height as the distance between the toe and the body chronoplane, and use the leg height difference to quantify the differential leg use. And we can see that the animal uses leg very different in the roll phase. So we speculate that the animal generates roll torque via this pushing and retracting motion. And we also observed active adjustment in on the head and abdomen in the form of flexion. So here we can see that when an animal want to traverse a beam or push through the beam, it flexes its head up and down multiple times to negotiate with the beams, and bend its head finally to roll its body. And here we can see that when a cockroach got stuck between the beams, it will wave its abdomen to propel its body and get rid of the stuck. So to quantify this head flexion, we use the pitch angle of the head in the animal body frame. And we use the standard deviation of this angle to represent the head flexion amplitude. So we can see that the animal flexes its head much in the pitch and roll phase. We speculate that when the animal pitched against the beam, it flexes its head to sense the terrain shape and properties, and then it rolled to and then when it rolled, it flexes its head to lead its body into the gap. I'll further explain it in another slide. And also for the abdomen, we define similarly. We define this pitch angle of the abdomen in the body frame as the abdomen flexion angle, and use the standard deviation of this angle to represent the abdomen flexion amplitude. So we can see that the animal also flexes its abdomen much in the pitch and roll phase. So we speculate that the animal did so to propel its motion or to reduce resistance from the terrain and get unstuck. If you look at the other trials, you can see that there's also another function for this head flexion. You can see that when the animal want to get through this beam, get the body aligned with the beam, it always have this body yawing left or right to negotiate. But you can see that in the whole process, its head was always pointing to the forward direction, which lead the animal finally traverse through this gap. So we can also thinking that this head flexion will have this leading function. We do want to test our hypothesis in the animal experiment, but it's really hard because because there are several reasons. First, the animal is too tiny to have the ground reaction force easily measured in the system. Also, these animals are hard to control to make them do such motion so that we can sweep all the parameters systematically. And also it is very difficult to untangle the behavior in the aspect of the sensing and also the dynamics separately, and also other kind of challenges. So we want to thank you. So we want to design a robot to mimic the kind of behavior and study more. So we started to design our robot to mimic the head flexion and abdomen flexion of the animal. We designed this head and abdomen that can flex on the robot, and added a force and torque sensor to sense the ground reaction forces. And we think that the animals can adjust its body pose using the legs, but the body orientation is not only results not only from the legs control, but also from the interaction with the opticals. So the body is somewhat underactuated during this interaction. So to mimic that, we added this kind of underactuated roll and torque, roll and pitch control. We also added forwarding motion and vertical oscillations, yaw control, and lateral displacement relative to the beams to fully cover the possible a cockroach beam reaction situation. So we collected some force and torque data from the body part and head part, and here are some preliminary results. We will use our system to systematically study how the underactuated head and abdomen adjustments change the force from the beams, how to use this force information to get a right adjustment via feedback control, and how to make a better transition. Here is a summary of my talk, and I'd like to acknowledge my lab mates and others who have helped and our funding sources. Thanks.